Hello.
Hello. I can't believe you're
in the
actually
flesh.
here
In the flesh. I think we should start by saying Scott McDermott's here as well, Record Sport Scott McDermott. Scott, good of you to join us tonight.
Remotely.
I know.
You've got cheek, Daniel. You must have a night. You must have a night out in the tune tonight, Jack. That's all reason.
He's on to me. No, but last night, Scott, I can't make the hotline. I've got kids in that. Kids? I mean, what comes first? The hotline. The hotline. There you go. No, it's good. It's good to have. It's good to have the dream team.
Oh, don't worry, Scott. Don't worry. Don't think that I didn't see it went unnoticed when you started giving me a hard time for not being available on Monday night, for having to go and look after people and real heroes, genuine heroes.
No, schmooze on the red carpet, Mel. Like
no, not at all.
Anything for a free dinner, Scott.
I know, currying up to Billy Gilmore and Jack Butland and all that while we're grafting.
Getting some autographs. Aye, best place for us to start, and I'm sure some people in the comments will love us. Rangers. the big.
Well, let's break with tradition, will we? Start with a Rangers story.
Well, the big story of today is probably around Hamza Igamane. It looks like there's big interest in him going to Lille, and possibly more clubs. I said before we come on here, I'd be pretty surprised if he goes with Dessers. Apparently,
I wouldn't be in the slightest bit surprised. Okay. I think this has been in the cards. I think that Rangers did exactly what Rangers want to do going on, moving forward. If you can buy low, source somebody like that, buy at a low price. And Philip Clement didn't get much right, but he did get it right when he said if Rangers didn't get him last summer, they wouldn't be able to afford him this summer.
That's probably fair.
Now, a couple of things. Igamane, I think he's a terrific prospect. I still think he's, as I said previously, as raw as a pound of Moroccan mince. But he's got talent. He's got bundles of talent, bundles of natural raw ability. My concern about him, development-wise, is that I think he might be a hard player to coach. I think that he's a free spirit. He'll play where he wants to play. And I just wonder, I think Rangers, they've given him a shop window. They've put him into the shop window, and they've got the opportunity here to sell at a real decent number. Look, the Lille story I believe to be accurate. I believe that his agents have been in discussions with Lille. What I would say to that, Daniel, is I think although the Lille end of that has leaked out, I would suggest to you that the agents will have been speaking to a variety of clubs, I think, with Rangers' blessing. Mm-hmm. And it's now a case of, right, you can go and speak to who you want and then bring your offers to the table. And I think Rangers will have set a minimum valuation on it. And if anybody gets to match that, then I think Rangers will be in a position where they will sell. And I think it's the right thing to do. I think they needed to bring in some extra finance to sort of fund the scale of the change that's required this summer, as well as the kind of fresh investment from their American owners. I think it makes sense, and I know that people will look at it and say, well, how can you sell Igamane and Dessers? That leaves them only with Danilo, who has proven himself to be, not available for his work half the time. A bit like yourself. You're our Danilo. Me and Scotty are Igamane and Dessers here, haven't you? So
should introduce you like that.
Now, I think it makes good business sense, and I anticipate there will be other clubs. And the early indications I'm hearing is there is at least one other French club, and I'm hearing it might be Marseille. And I think Scott and I were talking earlier. I think, Scott, you might have heard similar.
Aye, I think Marseille are definitely involved. I mean, I think Lille have maybe stolen a march in terms of getting in touch with the players' representatives. I think it's important to say we don't think any official bid has gone into Rangers as yet, but it feels like obviously representatives have been sounded out. The kind of terms on offer seem to be acceptable to the player, who I think would probably quite fancy that move to France. But as Jacko said, there are clearly other clubs involved. And if Rangers are looking to sell, that can obviously only be a good thing, because it could become a wee bit of a bidding war that might just take the price up a notch to where it's sitting at the moment. But I agree with Jack. I mean, that look, Rangers, if they get an offer of the size that we think it's going to be, then they have to sell. I mean, it's hard for supporters. We know the player trading model. We know how Rangers and Celtic have to operate. We've covered it so often on here. We get that. But it's hard for punters, obviously, because they get a talent like Igamane and they want to have him for, normally you maybe get 2 or 3 years out of these guys and then they'll kind of sell at their optimum kind of price, optimum value. But obviously this is kind of, it came out of the blue a wee bit today, and if the figures quoted are right, then whether he's only been there a year or not, Rangers have to accept a bid if that kind of offer comes in for him.
What kind of offer though, Scott? This is the next question. What kind of offer is acceptable? What kind of offer is the sort of offer that Rangers can't possibly refuse?
Well, you said Rangers will have a kind of idea of what they want. I think the figure kind of been bandied about seems to be like 15 million euros, which is what, maybe kind of 12 and a half, which I think would maybe be 10 million up front with kind of add-ons. I think if Rangers could get an offer like that, then it would be brilliant business for them. As I say, just a year into his Rangers career, I mean, I agree with Keith. He's a kind of raw, mercurial talent. Igamane, a lot of rough edges still to be kind of smoothed out, and Russell Martin might have been able to do that and develop him further. But you need to strike with the iron's hot. I mean, it's ironic that we're talking about Lille, because Lille were obviously the club that was in for Morelos at one point. What was it, 14 million?
Aye, something like that.
Rangers famously turned down, I think Stuart Robertson wanted Dembele dollars at the time. He wanted 20 million because he'd seen Dembele leave Celtic for that amount. And the Rangers lived to regret that decision ultimately. A couple of years later, Morelos walks out the door for nothing. They just can't do that anymore. Whether it's new owners or no, fresh investment or no, you get a bid of that size for a boy you've picked up for what, 1.5 million. You need to accept it, and you need to, and this is the key for Rangers going forward. If this is going to be the model, the recruitment team and recruitment kind of strategy has to be on point so that they've got the next Igamane lined up. I think he's Celtic with Josip Juranovic a few years ago. Celtic fans didn't want to let him go, hadn't been at the club too long, but a big bid comes in, they accept it, and no so long after they've got Alistair Johnson lined up to come in and be his replacement, and everybody forgets about Juranovic while the money's cashing in the bank. So that's where Rangers need to get to. This bid probably, or this interest in Igamane's probably came about a bit earlier, I think, than they would have expected. I'm quite surprised myself, just in terms of where he is in his development, that a Lille or a Marseille would pay the kind of money we're talking about. But it seems to be fairly genuine, seems to be a lot of interest. And if that bid comes in, then I think Rangers will accept it.
We're getting plenty of comments in on this as well, and please keep them coming if you want to get involved in the conversation. I actually caught up with Record Sports transfer guru, our resident expert, Scott Burns.
How was his Wi-Fi?
Do you know, it wasn't great. It wasn't great. I asked him about Igamane and a couple of other Rangers tidbits. While we're on Rangers, should we hear what he had to say?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Why not?
The headline news at Ibrox today is possibly one player that could be going out has Hamza Igamane. He is, as you're aware, being linked with the French club Lille, and that link, it's not speculation. There is clearly some concrete interest in the player, which may come as a surprise. I mean, he's always a talented player, but he's only been at Rangers for a season.
Yep.
Rangers bought him for 1.5 million, I think it was. I think under the former technical director Nils Coppin, he brought him onto the radar. But after his first full season at Rangers, it seems that the interest in him is definitely ramping up. French side Lille are interested. They've held talks with the player's agent. That is ongoing. As it stands, there has been no bid to Rangers, but I would be very surprised if it's not taken up to the next stage over the coming weeks. And my information is that the bid would be a double figure bid, as in £10 million plus. So if that is the case, it would be some markup on a player that's been there just over a season. And when he first arrived at Rangers, he was also injured as well.
Yeah, that's true.
But it also shows that, I mean, obviously Rangers did their homework on this one. Nils Coppin takes a lot of criticism and stick for some of the players that have come up, but it looks like he could end up with an ace, a real diamond here, and it could make Rangers a lot of money. I mean, a lot of criticism was put towards Rangers when they moved away from the more traditional scouting way and went towards the data. It's the data that's brought Hamza Igamane to Rangers. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it looks like this one could be a big one in terms of Rangers. It could also be important for Russell Martin, because I think everyone who's seen him is aware that he's a special talent, the boy, but he is very much at the start of his journey. So if Rangers are getting a very good bid like this from like a top French club, then they can go and reinvest that. And that's what I expect. I mean, if they get to the sort of figures that are being discussed behind the scenes, I think Rangers will take that, and that will allow them to bring in 2, maybe 3 players sort of thing. So I think it's a win-win all round. And I think Hamza Igamane has always, I mean, he always saw Rangers as a big club, but no disrespect, I think he always wanted to come to Rangers and then move on to a bigger league. The French league is a bigger league, and that step up might come sooner than most people expected.
Scott Burns there giving his take.
Scott Burns, I don't know if that was bad Wi-Fi or heavy horse tranquilizers or something. He didn't sound quite himself.
Our pal Gianni says Benati is in charge at Marseille, so that would make sense. He's from Morocco.
I think there's a heavy Moroccan influence at Marseille just now, so it does make sense, and you can see why there would be an interest there, yeah. Aye. Gianni's actually right for once. It's not often, but so this is quite a special show for Gianni tonight. I'm sure he can be very pleased with himself as he rolls out the next bit of pizza dough tonight. Well done, Gianni.
Mark says any side that pays £50 million for a second choice striker who didn't bang in the goals will be another French club going to the wall. And a couple of people as well. Thomas here, Scott, says, where did you get that price from? Did you just make it up? And a couple of people here saying, Nicky saying he wasn't even first choice. You've got to take 10 million if it's offered.
Listen, see the thing with this, and this is what I was trying to get at, and I'm coming at it from a little bit different than Scott. I don't think Lille have got ahead of the queue here. I think Lille are part of a process. I think Rangers have given permission to Hamza Igamane's agents to go out and take a look at the market, dip your toe in the market, see what you can find. And I think Lille will be one of several clubs that have been spoken to as part of that process. I think Marseille are involved in the process from what I'm hearing. Scott hears as well. Gianni's even heard it. But I think there's interest in England as well. So the point is this: when you're asking about what value do you place on Hamza Igamane, you put a minimum value where you say, right, okay, if we can get to that, then you know what, you tell the agents, if you can bring a bid of around that size to the table, then we're ready to talk business. However, it's like selling your house. If you've got 5 or 6 people all bidding against one another, that's when you start to get silly money. There is the potential with Hamza Igamane for Rangers to get silly money. And I don't mean, I'm not talking about 30 million or anything like that, and nowhere near it. But, you know, people might consider £10 million might, if there's enough competition and enough people interested, your 10 million could soon edge up towards 15. And if Rangers could get anywhere near that sort of money, I think it's a great bit of business. And I think that money would then go straight back into the kitty, because you've got American owners who cannot possibly be seen. It would be terrible in terms of optics if they come in, sold off an Igamane, sold off Dessers, and didn't reinvest or aren't seen to reinvest that money. That's not a good start. So I would imagine, I think it gives Rangers financial flexibility. And there's so much work required to this squad. I can understand the sense in it. However, some people will turn around and say, what, sell Igamane and Dessers and be left only with Danilo, as we're saying. And yeah, but what does that point to, Daniel? It points to what I've been saying for ages, is that all this stuff should have been getting worked out in the background months and months ago, so that when you get to the start of the window, you've already worked out where Igamane's going.
Got it all lined up.
And you've worked out, right, as soon as that deal, as soon as the ink dries on that, that's targets 1, 2 and 3. And you go and you make your moves. Rangers have got a real job in their hands trying to do all of this, starting point being a week or so ago. This was something that really the irons had to start going into fires a long, long time ago in order for Rangers to be properly ready and prepared for the start of the season, which is why that I've said a few times now, and I know I'm in danger of repeating myself. I think there's a danger that things will have to get a little bit worse for Rangers before they start to improve. I think this is going to be a really difficult summer, a really difficult transition, purely because of the numbers that are involved.
Scott, you can see on the screen there. Sorry, Scott, I was just going to say, Singing the Blues saying combine 20 million for Dessers and Igamane would be pretty good business. Although Safir says you need to build the team around Hamza and Raskin's stupidity selling them. Sorry, Scott.
No, I was just about to say, Jacko's hit the nail on the head there. That's the fascinating thing for me about this, is that, and we have been talking about it for weeks, just how quick this turnaround was going to be for Rangers and how little time they had to get their kind of house in order for the start of the season. If Russell Martin and Kevin Thelwell were coming in and their only job was to kind of get rid of the dead wood at Ibrox and get reinforcements in and build the squad, that's already a massive job, as we've spoken about so often. The fascinating thing is these bids are now coming in for players who I think you would have rather kept at Ibrox in an ideal world. You know, I've said before, I think we've all said that Dessers, if you had your choice, you would keep. No, you'd still need a number 9 coming in, a better number 9. Ideally, you'd want to keep Dessers and get rid of Danilo. It's the same with Igamane. No, the promise that he showed last season, you would think, right, another year out of him and he'll be a lot better. Raskin's another one that's been talked about, no potential interest in him. Another guy that you would definitely want in your Rangers midfield if you're Russell Martin and want to go and mount a title challenge. So on top of everything that they had to do initially coming in, and I'm talking about getting rid of guys like Ben Davies, Kieran Dowell, Robin Proper, all these kind of guys that you think are going to be surplus to requirements, to add this on top of it, where you're actually going to lose guys who you were maybe thinking was going to be part of your plans in the first team and have to replace them like for like, it just makes it, what was a big job initially makes it absolutely massive. And I agree with Jack, I'm now struggling to, you think they've got Max Aarons in so far, if you don't include Lyle Cameron, who's obviously a pre-contract. What are we, 3 weeks away, 3.5 weeks away for the Champions League qualifier? I just don't know how Russell Martin and Thelwell can possibly be expected to completely renovate this Rangers squad and get the required bodies and the required quality in at the start of the season to try and hit the ground running. I think it's going to be really, really difficult. And these bids for people like Igamane and Dessers or interest in Raskin just makes it so much more harder than it might have been.
I tell you what, though, I would say this: if they do get those sort of sales done, if it is Igamane and Dessers out the door, I think it does give them the option, Scott, certainly more financial flexibility to go to Raskin and put an offer on the table to him to extend his contract. And you say to him, look, we just can't lose you this summer. Sign another contract. You'll be well rewarded for it financially. And we'll look then to offer you up next season. And if you look back at the way Celtic have done it, that was always the way. Celtic never wanted to lose too many at one time. They would always be like one big one every year. And that's obviously the model that Rangers are trying to copy. So, that only becomes really complicated if Raskin says, "Nah, I don't care what you offer me, I want to leave this summer," because then he has to get sold as well. So you're right, Scott, so much to do. But, this seemed to me to be obvious coming from a distance off that this was going to be a really, really difficult starting point for the new American owners, for the new manager. There's just so much work to get done. And again, we're going to speak about Hearts later. Again, I come back to, if you're Derek McInnes, you're sitting there rubbing your hands, putting that squad together, thinking they're vulnerable.
Aye. Well, time is ticking away. We need to talk about other things. But just as we wrap up on Rangers, what's your gut feelings? Do you think Igamane will leave this summer?
Yeah.
Think so?
Yep.
Scott?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Okay. Cool. Before we go any further, your low him up. It says Daniel's like Superman without the glasses. He's usually Clark Kent. I just couldn't find my glasses, but he can come back every night if he likes.
In what way?
Well, just like really handsome, strong, just an absolute tank, basically.
It sounds like tank.
I walked right into that one, didn't I? Right. Shall we talk about Celtic now? There's been a bit of speculation regarding Nicholas Kuhn again. We talked about it earlier this week. Our information, again, from our transfer guru, Scott Burns, is that perhaps it's the agent trying to work his ticket a little bit. Yeah,
although I do think there is interest in Nicholas Kuhn. I think the stuff from Germany is pretty real. And I can understand why. He had a terrific Champions League campaign, and in more than one of those games, it was against German opposition. There's no way he didn't catch the eye. German clubs are obviously very keen to promote German products and German youngsters, German players. Kuhn's one that they've allowed to kind of get away from them. It wouldn't surprise me at all if there was genuine desire to get him back. I think it's real. I think there is legitimate interest. I noticed this afternoon that Italian side Como have been credited with a big interest as well. I think Nicholas Kuhn's another that isn't long for these shows. Having said all that, I'm very conscious of the fact that you asked me for my gut on Greg Taylor last night, and I said my gut was telling me that I think Brendan Rodgers has worked a little bit of magic on him. I think that he's given him something to think about. I think that Greg Taylor, in ordinary circumstances, would probably have been away before now if it wasn't for the fact that Brendan Rodgers has been in his ear. Looks like Greg Taylor's off next week, doesn't it?
He must have watched the show and went, do you know what?
I can't stand this. Yeah.
I mean, first of all, on Kuhn, John says Kuhn has a lot of goals and assists, a lot to lose. Marzuno says his highlight reel from the first half of last season was pretty special. Look, if Celtic are to lose Kuhn, what do you see the price being? What do you see there?
Again, we're having the same discussion now. It's what anybody's willing to pay.
Well, what I've seen the other night, it was the night you went on. If Celtic got offered 15 million, personally, and Matt, and for me, I would jump at that.
I would agree with you, and I think that's achievable. I think that around that fee is very much achievable for Celtic. But Celtic are masters of this, of wheeling and dealing in the transfer market. They're capable of pulling in massive fees. So you just don't know. And they've got a track record. They can point to it. They can point to the back catalogue and say, well, he went for 25. He's gone for 25. This is the price we sell at. That's. I don't know if you can apply that to individual players, but I think Celtic will certainly give it a go. So who knows? I think that the interest in Kuhn is legit. Yes, I think his agents are working away in the background. And do I think that he looked particularly delighted to be at Celtic after he went out the Champions League? No, and that would give me a question. That's why I've always thought that he might move on this summer, because Brendan Rodgers questioned the attitude of some of his players towards the end of last season. And if you notice, that was when Nicholas Kuhn dropped out of the starting 11. So for me, I'm not sure that he's shown Brendan Rodgers the sort of enthusiasm for the task that Brendan Rodgers demands of his players. I think if Celtic can make a quick turn on him, I think that's what will happen.
And here's the point, Scott, as well. Mark saying Kuhn would be a miss, but the club specialises in recruiting replacements, like we're saying.
And wingers.
That's the model, really, isn't it?
That's the whole point. That's the way it has to be, Daniel. I mean, it's similar to even managers and coaches. Now, if you put a sporting director in place, then part of his job is to see around corners and see if players are leaving or managers might leave, they need to have the next guy lined up. That's the gig. And the best teams and the best clubs do that really, really well and really successfully. So I've no doubt Celtic will have a contingency plan already if Kuhn goes. I mean, it looks, I feel as if we've been saying this for ages, right enough, but it looks as if Nygren, the Swedish winger, is going to come in. Certainly can play wide right. That deal should probably get done. Although, as I say, I've been expecting that for a couple of weeks now.
I know it's dragging on a bit.
Aye, but if Kuhn
I think there might be some work permit issues involved in that one, but I think, you know, we started this week thinking it would be done before the end of this week.
Aye.
Still think that would be.
You still think it's going to get done?
Yeah,
Aye. And just quickly, on Greg Taylor. Look, personally, I think it'd be a huge blow to Celtic if they lose Greg Taylor.
Well, I agree, and I've said it. I think he's the ideal man, and Brendan Rodgers, more importantly than what you think or what I think, believe it or not. Brendan Rodgers sees him as the ideal backup to Kieran Tierney. And that, by the way, I'm sure that he didn't sit him down and say, Greg, I think you're the ideal backup to Kieran Tierney. I'm sure that he said to him, look, this position will need to be shared. Mm-hmm. The games can get shared throughout the course of the season. You're going to be a big contributor if you stay here. Mm-hmm. It does appear from what we're hearing this afternoon. Where's he going? He's got a medical next week.
Pauk, apparently.
Pauk. Yeah, he's got a Pauk, yeah. Should be I think it's a 3-year deal. I got kind of word today that was pretty much done. I think he's obviously had a lot to weigh up Greg Taylor. I mean, aside for staying at Celtic, there was a lot of interest. Copenhagen, club in the MLS, interest down south as well. So there
was interest from Croatia as well, wasn't there, right at the start?
Yeah, Dinamo Zagreb, that's right. So, right. But no, it looks as if he's going to Pauk in Greece Super League. They'll win the Europa League next season. It's a big decision for him, big contract at 27. Especially if that offer to stay with Celtic was on the table, which we believe it was. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on over there. But just another Scot, want to go and try playing abroad. We've spoke about obviously the boys in Italy, Max Johnson going to Austria. Taylor's the next one, so it'll be interesting to see how he goes.
Mo says, like you were saying, Keith, Tierney will be injured. Greg Taylor would end up playing 40 games, which I mean isn't outlandish.
And it does give Celtic the issue that if he does move, and it seems that he is, then somebody else will need to come in, and somebody else will be coming in very much on the ticket of you'll be Kieran Tierney's understudy. Aye,
and our pal Gianni saying sun, sea, and sand. Can't blame him, but both of you humour me here, right? Do you really think Pauk have offered them more money than Celtic?
Yeah,
think so. Aye? Yeah. Okay,
that's kind of the way it works.
I thought maybe it'd be similar, but he's
always wanted to play for Pauk. He grew up a Pauk fan and all that.
Used to go them in Football Manager.
I tell you what, the one thing I would say is we've talked about leaving a club like Celtic and then going to a place where you're kind of looking about and shrugging your shoulders and saying, how did I end up here? And it doesn't thrill you the same way. It doesn't give you the same feeling going out on Pauk. I have never experienced an atmosphere anywhere in European football.
Really?
It is awesome.
That's interesting.
It's also terrifying.
Aye.
So if I wasn't having a very good game for Pauk, I'd be very concerned. But oh my God, it is astonishing. Astonishing the atmosphere that they by the way, they're in the ground 3 hours before kickoff. Wow. It is bedlam, lining the streets a mile outside the stadium. Talk about intimidation. Oh my God.
Fair play.
Yeah.
And as Scott says, it's good to see another Scot going abroad. Hopefully he does well. Right, elsewhere, big news for Hibs. Rocky Bashiri is set to sign a new deal, it looks like.
I think we flagged that up on here a few weeks ago towards the end of last season, didn't we? That was looking more than likely that he was going to sign a new deal. And it's a good bit of business, because if you came to us, I don't know, August last year and said new deal for Rocky Bashiri, people would look at it as if you were off your head. The change of system really suited him. David Gray changed to the 3 at the back, and I think it really helped him. He looks far more stable, secure, confident, and became a mainstay in the second half of last season. So that's a great bit of business for Hibs, I think.
He looked like a bit of a bomb scare last season, to be honest.
Playing as, in a partnership as a two, he was all over the shop.
But brilliant in the season just gone.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I think the change came when Jack Ardell came into the left-hand side of that Hibs 3.
He's been great as well.
He was, I told you, I got a bit of a fanboy for Jack Ardell last season. I thought he was every time I saw Hibs, he was a standout for me.
Aye.
And I think he made a massive difference to Rocky Bashir.
Aye. And also, we should talk about Hearts, because we mentioned Shankland on the show the other night. Scott, I noticed in today's Record Sport, you obviously were with Derek McInnes the other day. He was talking about how, with this Tony Bloom investment, he understands that silverware has to become incoming at Tynecastle. One man that I imagine will be pretty important to that is Lawrence Shankland. We know that, or we mentioned on the show the other day, that Hearts go away on Saturday for their pre-season trip. Is it Spain? Spain?
Yeah.
Derek McInnes has said he was desperate for Shankland to be on the plane.
I can give you an update that's come in while I've been on the show.
Go ahead.
There is a lot of speculation that Lawrence Shankland is on the verge or has agreed to sign a new 3-year contract at Hearts. I can tell you that's not the case. And I think it's disappointing news as we stand right now with only, where are we, Thursday night, Hearts away on the Saturday. I think Hearts have been pushing hard. They're wanting an answer. I think that the Hearts supporters were hopeful that, something might have been done today. I can tell you as of this morning that that wasn't the case. He hadn't agreed. And I'm told that in the last 10, 20 minutes since we've been on air, nothing has changed on that regard. So Shankland remains non-committal. Derek McInnes takes his side away on Saturday morning. So you think it's a big 24 hours for Lawrence Shankland now? Do you want to, how badly do you want to be a part of this? Because in an ideal world, if you want to be a part of it, get on that plane.
Craigie says, Scott, Shanks is heading to Ibrox. Huge.
I don't think that's happening, Daniel. No, I mean, Lawrence Shankland has got interest for other clubs, but I know for a fact Rangers definitely isn't one of them at the moment. Or certainly, Rangers have not made contact with him or his agent regarding a move. And as Jacko says, I mean, if that's the latest with Shankland, then it's hard to see him being on that plane on Saturday, isn't it? I mean, that looks very doubtful now.
Unless there's a significant movement tomorrow, obviously, Scott.
Aye, but so I think that would be unlikely. I mean, if it's not done by now, knowing how much the manager wants him to go pre-season, then I think it'd be unlikely. I don't think Derek McInnes will give up on it, far from it. But as he said the other day, he needs an answer. He's got a squad to put together. He's got a League Cup group stage to navigate coming up very shortly. And he made no bones about it. He wanted Shankland there. He wants his strongest team for that League Cup group stage because he wants to hit the ground running this season. We know Europe. So I don't know. I just think the longer it goes, I think if Shankland is going to be swayed to stay at Hearts by the influence of McInnes, I just think it'd have been done by now. I think he'd have made his mind up by now. And I think the longer it goes, probably the worse it is for Hearts fans as he weighs up other options and ultimately decides where he's going to go for next season.
Aye. Our good friend of the show, Kyle Gunn, I put the comments up there a minute ago. He says Oseni to Plymouth is now all but done. Obviously from St Mirren. He says the deals could be done next week. There's actually a couple other little transfer bits that I should mention before we finish with Celtic and Rangers.
I've got one as well that's just come through.
You go ahead.
Bit of speculation earlier today that Dutch veteran Luc de Jong might be on the hit list, the potential hit list of recruitments for Rangers. If they are going to be looking for strikers, it would make a bit of sense, given he's had a decent career. He is 34, turning 35 this summer. He's out of contract at PSV and is stalling on signing a new deal. They want him to stay. But there's a speculation that he's looking for another trip abroad. He's been abroad. He's been at Newcastle. He's been at Barcelona, various places. And there is this speculation that he may be looking for another adventure in another country. That has led to there being links with Rangers, I think, over in Holland. My information, which I have no reason to doubt, is that the news linking Luc de Jong with Rangers is not correct. Rangers haven't expressed an interest in him, and Luc de Jong is not. So listen, it's a bit of a non-story, but these rumours are flying about, and that's the very latest, right up to date from Holland. That if anybody thinks that Luc de Jong might be on the Rangers list of potential striking replacements, I believe that's not going to be the case.
The other thing that I thought I should mention as well, as I've mentioned it in the headline, Cathal O'Sullivan is the Irish boy that apparently several outlets in Ireland are urging Celtic to get him signed up. He plays for Cork City, who Celtic are playing a friendly soon. He has been dubbed the Irish Yamal.
No pressure then.
No pressure at all. But 18, watched little clips of him. I know he's been a name doing the rounds for a little while now. But he's one. And also, I should mention, our transfer guru, Scott Burns, mentioned that Bolton Wanderers have had a bid for Johnny Kenny rejected, 500k.
Right.
He says, obviously, they might come back with another bid. They might even try and get him on loan. But as it stands, that bid's been rejected.
Right. Well, I mean, the Irish Yamal is certainly would be interesting, and obviously Celtic will get the chance to have a good look for themselves. I think they're playing a pre-season game there in July. So yeah. Listen, Ireland's always been a real hotbed for talent, for talented youngsters. And, a lot of them seem to get funneled down into English Premier League. But, maybe Celtic can get ahead of that. They've done it with the likes of John Kenny. It's not really worked out for John Kenny. I don't think it's going to work out for John Kenny. And I think, it's probably time for him to think about moving on this summer, because I don't think he made enough. The few chances that he's got, or that he got towards the tail end of last season, I don't think he really did enough to make anyone think, yeah, you're really going in the mix for a starting place next season. So it's probably time for him to move on. But again, that kind of tells you that Celtic need to bring in, I think, at least 2 strikers over the course of the summer.
Aye. And the last little bit of transfer news was regarding Rangers and Owen Beck.
Yeah.
Because again, apparently
over
Rangers...
to Scotty?
Yep. Sorry, go ahead, Scott.
No, I think that's a big one, Daniel, because I think it was actually Scott Burns that did the story today, saying Rangers are definitely interested in Owen Beck. They'd like to try and get him, but there seems to be a kind of massive caveat, and that is they have to get rid of Ridvan Yilmaz first, which we've spoke about on here already. If Rangers were going to get in for a left back, Yilmaz would probably be the one they look to try and offload. There's been interest in the past for Yilmaz from Turkey, naturally. Again, he's a player that's just not worked out for him at Ibrox. I mean, he's shown flashes of his ability, but he's never available enough. He's missed a lot of games through injury. You can't really rely on him. But if there is interest in Turkey, they might be able to try and get their money back on Yilmaz. And if they can, then I think Owen Beck would be a brilliant replacement, given...
I think it's an upgrade, Scott, is it not?
Aye, I would say so.
100%. Jacko, just going on what we watched of Beck at Dundee, and then by all accounts, I think he was Blackburn Rovers Young Player of the Year last season, where he was on loan in the Championship. I think he's a top young player, Owen Beck, and I think his style, having watched him at Dundee, his style for me would be ideal for what Russell Martin's looking for and what he's looking for from his fullbacks. I think Russell Martin will probably quite like Jeffrey as well, the way he plays, and I do think there's a place for Jeffrey. I still think there's a bit of development in him, but
I think his own Beck not a bit more secure defensively, Scott. For what I've seen of him, I think he is. I think he's more robust. He's more switched on defensively.
Aye, that's always been a criticism of Jeffrey, Jack. I mean, right for the start of last season when he signed, just defensively at the back post or defensively up 1-on-1. I think it was a game right at the start pre-season when Jeffrey first came in against Man United at Murrayfield, and Amad Diallo gave him a right tough time, and I think he did improve slightly as the season kind of went on. I think he had a decent start to the season, Jeffrey, but I think as things kind of went awry at Rangers and with Clement towards the end of the season, I think his game suffered a bit as well. And also I think Jeffrey maybe played 30-odd, 40-odd games last season, which when he came in as a young Brazilian fullback, I don't think many people expected that. I think maybe only expected him to play 15, 20 games. There's a Chelsea comment coming up.
Thanks for that. I should say as well, Barry pointing out Would Celtic not be in for Fullback? They need a left back.
Well, that is an interesting one. We discussed this the other night. If you thought Greg Taylor was staying, no, you wouldn't be going for Fullback. Don't need it. But now that Greg Taylor appears to have made his decision and it's not Celtic, then I think Celtic go to their list of left backs that we quite fancy. And as I said to you the other night, I know for a fact that Brendan Rodgers really, really rated him 18 months ago, thought he was getting him, but Jurgen Klopp threw Fullback on as a substitute in a League Cup game, and it kiboshed the whole thing. So all I can conclude from that, Fullback has done nothing over the subsequent period of time which would put you off the idea. If you fancied it 18 months ago, you'll still be fancying it now, if not even more so. So yes, I think he would be on a list of players that Celtic would be highly interested in.
But John's saying he wouldn't want to be second choice left back either to Tierney, but
well, there is that, because that is what we're saying. Yeah.
That's the problem.
Mind you, second choice to Kieran Tierney or second choice to Hefty.
Aye, very true. I think on that note,
what I would say is, I think Rangers fans should be quite encouraged. I know that we're looking at players going out from the kind of small, shallow pool of strikers that they've got, but Rangers needed an overhaul defensively first and foremost.
Big time.
And if they did get Fullback and they've got Max Aaron, so there's your fullback sorted out. Connor Cody looks at that'll happen. And by the way, I think that'll be an excellent signing.
Think so?
Oh yeah. I really rate Connor Cody. He's a he's a guy with 10 England caps. He's got bags of Premier League experience, and he's one of those no nonsense centre halves. He's there to defend first and foremost. I think he can use the ball as well, but I think he's also a leader. I think he would be a massive addition in there. So you're almost looking like Russell Martin's first 3 signings have completely transformed the back four,
defense,
and there could be a centre half, another centre half to come in there as well. You would expect. So I think that was I give them a bit of kudos for that they've identified there's a major weakness here, and you cannot build a title competing team on the foundations of a wobbly back four, and that's what Rangers have had.
Jacko, but by the end of the transfer window, this goes back to what we were saying earlier. Maybe not for the start of the season, but by the end of the transfer window, this Rangers team could look entirely different. I mean, this could be an entire new Rangers team we're talking about. No, from back to front. That's the fascinating thing. How that's going to manifest itself. How it's going to look.
How long it takes for the pieces all to fit in together, Scott.
Yeah, and the style obviously that Martin wants to adopt.
Yeah.
I know very finally is my favourite saying, but Robbo's saying that Andy Robertson's Liverpool career looks like it's over.
Oh, Andy Robertson for Celtic, that'd be some move, wouldn't it? Obviously, Liverpool today announced that they've brought, I think, £40 million they've paid for Kerkez from Bournemouth. And he's, I really rate him. Who wouldn't? He's top notch. I still have a feeling that Andy Robertson thinks he's got more to give Liverpool. I'd agree with him. I've watched Kerkez and I think he is really, really good, but I know that Andy Robertson at the top of his game is as good as anything in the English Premier League. Andy Robertson, there might be a part of him thinking his pal has just left for Real Madrid. He's getting interest in him from Atletico Madrid. It might be time, but I don't know. I think Andy Robertson has at least one more season left in at Anfield. Again, that's a hunch. Look how the Greg Taylor hunch worked out within 24 hours. So by this time tomorrow night, Andy Robertson's probably signing for Atletico.
Well, Gianni there saying Atletico signing Atlanta left back today, Ruggeri.
Thanks, Gianni. You just got me off the hook.
There you go. Perfect. But Barry says Robbo at left back, KT at LCB. Who knows? I think that brings the end of Thursday's Hotline Live. Transfer special. Plenty of transfer news to keep you going.
It's all starting to pick up, isn't it?
That is all starting to pick up, aye. Thanks very much for all your comments. We really appreciate it. If you want to get involved in the conversation, you can do so on Sunday when we'll be back to do it all again.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock on Sunday. Hope you can join us then. Scott, it's always a pleasure.
Cheers, Daniel. Cheers, Jack.
Cheers, Scotty.
And thanks for watching at home. Cheers.